Well, hello and good evening. I wasn't expecting to be doing this tonight. It would appear the Portuguese Prime Minister resigned his job earlier on today here in Portugal. So we're here to talk about that this evening, and we have Portuguese friends who are going to help us, foreigners, expats, immigrants, estrangeiros, make sense of it and what the consequences might be for generally for the country and for the Portuguese people. And as a second thought. What about us? What about us, the Good Morning Portugal community, who are made up largely of immigrants, foreigners, expats, people who've moved to Portugal who want to understand what this all means, and we have begun our coverage over at, for those of you who are GMP VIPs, I can see a few of you already. Bobby O'Reilly's here. Let's have it, he's saying, about the conversation tonight. Boa from Filomena. Pascual, good evening to you. Tia Filomena. Nubianet's here, tuned in from California. Laura in the Algarve already here. Boa what news? Yeah, it's been quite a shock today. Certainly for me anyway. I'm guessing the sense I get is it's a shock for the Portuguese people. In Iceland, look, Buddy's here as well. Benoit trying to keep up with things. We'll do our best to do that for you tonight. And our first guest, we want people to join us. If you want to join me on the screen, I'll send you the link. You know how to get in touch with me. 00351 913 590 303. And I'll keep an eye on the phone, on WhatsApp as well, so that we can have you call in. If you don't want to be on the screen, you can also join us via WhatsApp as a phone call, basically. So I'll keep an eye on that too. But our first guest tonight, who wants to give us a bit of feedback on what's going on from a Portuguese point of view, an old friend of the Good Morning Portugal community, it's Joel Milhages. How are you? Up there in Matosinhos, up there near Porto. How are you, Joel?
I'm doing okay, relatively speaking. Hope you are too. So.
Definitely a bit of a shock. I mean, we've had a few interesting things rocking the general boat from the expat point of view that I'm sure you're aware of. You know, the golden visa going, the NHR 10% tax on alcohol. That was a bit of a shocker as well, Joel, of course. And then, well, something I learned about today, the RUC, the road taxation duty on cars to get your car on the road. There's a big hike in that planned as well.
Yes, as a personal example, since I have two cars that are prior from 2007 at home,
Yep.
I will both of the cars that I have, mine included, will suffer if that budget for 2024 gets approved, a 400% increase in tax.
Good heavens, that's a lot. What with everything else as well that's been going on. So, okay, let's say a few more hellos tonight. We've got Sarah Bonoit from Leria. Thank you for tuning in. A few names that I've not heard from a little while. Jonathan, or at all for that matter. Jonathan Matthews, check out the scale of threat to Portugal from lithium mining, because that's what this alleged corruption scandal is about, isn't it? It's the relationship to the lithium mining industry. Swathes of countryside at risk and communities that we would be decimated. It may be that Jonathan is quite pleased that this intervention has taken place. Bonoit from Sues in central Portugal. Still yoga with a Carl Bonoit, I think that is there. Vicky Mohammed also joining us. Bonoit a todos. Our friend in the wealth management business over there in Gibraltar's tuned in. Keep the plebs distracted with left-wing rhetoric while he ransacks the country's treasures. Typical. NHR is not this. And plain speaking, right away there from Paul. Bonoit Joel from Squire of the Shires. Good evening, Squire. Keep these comments coming. Thank you, everybody. From Anna in the Algarve, Bonoit. Great initiative, Carl. Well, we had to do something tonight. Maria Maliero, good evening to you, Maria. Good to see you. Bonoit to you. And Bob Wenger, already here as well. Bonoit Adoros. Glad to have this discussion. Thank you, Carl. And Ben Deason. Hello, Ben. Good to see you. Hey, Carl. And Tom Smith. So get those questions in from Ohio. Tom Smith, I'm on my way to vote. So politics, both sides of the water for Tom Smith tonight. Lord Gilchrist, pleased to see you. And hello, Mr. Munson from Braga, from Saline H. So what do you make of it as a Portuguese man? Who I think it's fair to say you're a little bit cynical about Portuguese politics. What did you make of the news today, Joel?
If I had firecrackers, I would be putting outside and lighting them up for sure. I'm not very pleased with this government. Never was. Every time a socialist government has been in power, always comes with disgrace. But in order not to be biased, and for those that are into politics, my recommendation is follow up a little bit of the Portuguese history and scandals that were in politics after 1974, and you will see a pattern the same way that I did. And even though I was only born and my right to vote was at 18, so I started voting in 1996. Ever since, and the pattern was always the same thing. Socialism, or this social party that currently is in government, is not the best solution for the Portuguese, because as far as I understand my history, the Portuguese history, it always brings misery to the people, even though they don't like to admit it. But you have current examples like the NHR situation, which is in shambles, even though it doesn't look like it, but it is. You have the case with this government of 13 ministers being replaced on something that prior, when we had a president of the republic that was a Socialist Party member, did a re-election or dismantle the Partido Social Democrata, or PSD party, which is a center-right lenient party, with just 3 ministers being replaced. He dismantled and made early elections. With this one being PSD, the things tends to be more lenient, and he let the current government, do whatever they wanted to do, and scandals after scandals, until reached a point where now we have this resignation from the prime minister because of the police investigation being directly affected under his management, so to speak.
All right, thank you, Joel. So basically, in all your lifetime, you've known nothing other than corruption in Portuguese politics. It's quite interesting for us foreigners, Joel, because people who've lived in the ravages of the free market are quite pleased to come to Portugal and get a sense of what socialism can do for the country. And then you talk to Portuguese people like yourself, and it's like quite a different story. As Sir Lion H is saying, socialismo is poverty and corruption. However, Laura P is saying corruption has no color. Jonathan is saying, sorry, go on, mate. Carry on.
Yes, what I'm saying is no. It has no color. There has been cases of PSD members, party members of PSD, party members from PCP, Bloco de Esquerda, and other CDS of being involved in corruptions, on scandals of corruption.
Yeah. Okay. A rather direct interjection here from the Fat Baker. Get the doc on, Carl. Let's have some sensible political analysis, not the right-wing nonsense. Interestingly, other people would say, don't get the doc on because we've had enough of the left-wing nonsense. You can't please all the people all the time, can you? But the doc is welcome to call in, as anybody is, on 0035195100303. Go on, Joe.
I don't feel offended by that comment, even though I consider myself a center.
Yeah.
Depending on your points of view, people might consider me conservative, and the more I look at it and how society and all of us around us are developed their own rationality and thoughts, I tend to be probably right. So
okay, thanks, Joel. Thank you.
Bias.
And it is all relative, of course. It takes a little bit of understanding how the spectrum shifts if you come from the UK or the US. So let's take that on board too. I want to know from you culturally as well, because this is all about helping us understand it as foreigners, as the estrangeros here. What is in a way that we can't quite understand, the temperature among Portuguese people? What have you been hearing from family and friends at the cafe today? What would you say is the general kind of atmosphere or reaction from Portuguese people?
Some surprised, because usually we don't follow the news on the media, at least because this was a thing that happened earlier in the beginning of the afternoon, just after lunch, so not many people should know about it, have known about it when that happened. probably now there will be a lot more people with their own personal opinions if they are here available. Other Portuguese want to get their own personal opinions.
Okay. Well, we're very keen to hear. Thanks for getting us started. Is there anything else you want to share with us, having got the ball rolling for us tonight, Joel?
About this case, well,
Absolutely,
the thing
about this case.
about this, so this started 2 years ago. This case, with it's related to the mining exploration of lithium, and it is based on a corruption case that was muffled by the national network television on a program. Yeah, so this investigation occurred 2 years ago. Like I said, it was done by a reporter, an investigative journalist that was doing a piece before the piece was already made, before the elections that put this that gave the majority to this party now in government under Antonio Costa, about the process of how to achieve the process of giving the mining exploration rights. So what happened was there was a Portuguese company made 2 weeks prior to this, let's say, contest, international contest. That company was created 2 weeks prior to that contest being made public. And what happened is, one of the guys that made the company was actually, I believe, a friend of the prime minister, and was on a very cloaked and shady business that we still don't understand how an early young company with just 2 weeks old managed to get the rights to do the exploration.
All right, Joel, I think I need to stop you there and say thank you. And also, as you said, we don't quite understand yet. These are allegations, and the Prime Minister has resigned based on not finding his position tenable, given the accusations that have been made. But I thank you for joining us. And anyone who joins us on the screen tonight is, of course, voicing their own opinions and positions on this. And I thank you for doing that, Joel. And everyone else is entitled and free to do so on 00351 913 590303. Just a very quick one for you before you go. A concern that's come in from Tom. Do you think it will force an early election? My money is on no, says Tom, but I'm not putting down much. Can we have a quick answer from you on that, Joel, please?
There are two options. Either the President of the Republic says to the current party in power to elect a new Prime Minister to take over the charge, and does the full term, or if he doesn't have any other solution, is convoke early elections, probably next year, maybe June or July, something like that.
All right. Oh, another one before you go. Does Joel not think there's corruption in other parties? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, I think is the phrase.
There is corruption in other parties. You have, for example, the left-wing party called PCP, which has a former terrorist as the city mayor.
Right.
That is one example.
Is that a matter of public record?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right, Joe. Well, thank you very much for your contribution tonight. Really appreciate it. Let's give other people a chance to have their say. I think we might like to have Jonathan Matthews on the phone. So give us a call, Jonathan, on 00351 913 590303. Keep those questions coming in. We're not all up to speed as much as we might be, and that's why we're getting our Portuguese friends to help with the situation tonight. So, Joel, for the time being, thank you very much, mate. Thank you for joining us, and we'll keep an eye on the situation. Take care, mate. Bye for now. Ciao, ciao. Much appreciated there, Joel, up in the north of Portugal. I'll take a look now for anyone who's thinking, what? The Portuguese Prime Minister resigned today? I didn't know about that. So this morning, well, actually, it was this afternoon when news began to filter through, and I was riveted to. I was actually watching CNN, which is not something I generally like to do, but it was the best way. I think it was Tom Smith's suggestion to learn a bit of Portuguese and get some level of understanding of what's going on. Let me take you to the Portugal resident now, for their coverage. And I'm just going to answer the phone and put you on hold for a moment, Lord Gilchrist, because I think you want to have a say on this. Actually, I'll call you back in a little while. Let's just set the scene for people. Portugal's Prime Minister António Costa has officially resigned. Mr. Costa's resignation had been touted all morning. Okay, so it was bubbling through this morning as the country has been assailed by allegations of high-level corruption concerning lithium and hydrogen prospection. And the news that a separate investigation has been opened into suspicions that the Prime Minister himself had, in inverted commas, quoting here, facilitated business in lithium mines in Montalegre and Boticas. As commentators have said, no country, no government can support a Prime Minister who is suspected of being a facilitator. Mr. Costa was due to have spoken to the country at 2 p.m. this afternoon. At 2:24, television cameras were still rolling on an empty podium in São Bento Palace, the PM's official residence, and then he arrived. The PM said that up until this morning, he had every intention of carrying his mandate through to the end, due in 2026. But today, he said, I was surprised with the information confirmed by the Office of the Attorney General that a criminal process has or will be opened against me. With a clear conscience and no weight upon him, in brackets, of having done anything censurable, he accepts that there is no way a Prime Minister under suspicion of a crime can remain in office, and thus he has tendered his resignation to President Marcelo, who accepted it. So let's see if we can get this caller on the line who wanted to have, who had something to say about this as well. Have we got you there, Andrew Gilchrist in Lisbon?
Hello, Carl. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Just a quick comment that Joel has a good lawyer from Jonathan Matthews with some of the things he was saying earlier on. Anyone who calls in takes complete responsibility for their own comments and opinions. You included, Andrew Gilchrist. What have you got to say?
Well, just an observation from the people I speak to, the native Portuguese people I speak to, when I ask them about politics, there's a general a consensus that this current government has been in power for too long, and that also, no matter the kind of blatant appearing blatant corruption that seems to go on, there's kind of an apathy from Portuguese.
Oh, you seem to cut off
different government.
Okay. So what like same old, but I mean, this is pretty serious, isn't it? We've got a resignation here. We haven't got the normal rumblings of crying foul and possible corruption going on. This is the PM has actually resigned here, Andrew. How do you think that makes it different?
Well, I mean, I think it's probably, I mean, obviously these are allegations, so I've got to be careful of how I speak about this, because obviously, this is in the public forum. But there's no smoke without fire. Why would he resign unless it's damaging politically to the party? Maybe his hand was forced by others in the party. I don't know exactly. I just, like I said, I've seen snippets of the statement this afternoon. But like I said, my kind of yardstick is speaking to the local people, what they think. And there seems to be this kind of general consensus that they've been in power too long.
Okay, but that's a different matter, isn't it? They might not like them being in power. What do you say? They're sort of feeling triumphant that they've got rid of the guy.
If someone gets very comfortable, with their feet under the table, then this is where you get those opportunities for corruption to occur. I mean, if you take a look at the US political system, a person going to be president for 2 terms, for example, and that's maximum, because obviously you don't want someone to get so kind of entrenched that lots of side hustles get going and stay going.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think that there is a lot of discontent with people, particularly with this government. The many issues that I speak to the locals about, the corruption is one of the many things that they are unhappy about.
Okay, all right. Let me just ask you to pause for a moment, because I want to come back to you on how you feel about this as a foreigner here yourself. as well as, the speculation about the particular case. What does it mean to you as an individual here? But let's take on a few comments that you might also want to respond to. While it's disappointing that Costa has these allegations over him, says the Fat Baker, the lithium should be used for the benefit of the Portuguese people, not enriching individuals, I guess. I'm not sure what that exactly means, but yeah, it shouldn't be going into the pockets of individuals. It should be for the benefit of the Portuguese people, I think is what the Fat Baker's saying. I have invited the doc to join us. We'll see if he comes up, trumping as it were, and sharing his views a little later in this special webinar that we're doing tonight, responding to the resignation of Prime Minister Antonio Costa here in Portugal. Costa was hardly leftist, more Blairite. And as I said before, it's all relative to people, isn't it? Depending on the political waters you swim in. I need to sit above this comment. How many Portuguese will be able to afford to drive the electric cars the lithium is being extracted for? This is the tip of the iceberg, says Jonathan. Do feel free to call in and voice this yourself, Jonathan. Look at the UK-based mining interests back in 2000 that applied for and have been granted prospecting licenses. Not here to defend the socialists in any way, but this runs deeper than the colour of party politics. Portugal needs to be very careful what it wishes for with what is a regime change by another name. You made another interesting comment earlier on, I think, about him maybe picking up another job elsewhere, and perhaps we don't need to worry too much about him. Get the doc on, Carl. I've done my best to get him on. Ubi's here, I'm sure we'll have things to say. Bobby agreeing, get the doc on also. Be aware that PSD is not a right-wing party, says Sir Lion H. I think up in Braga, his founder said PSD is a centre-left party. Just a little bit of political education for us. Thank you for that. If US government was more functional and less fascist, I might be concerned about Portuguese politics. I think that's another comment that shows you it's all relative. Also bear in mind the Portuguese PM, there we go, Jonathan saying, I also bear in mind the Portuguese PM is now lined up for a top European job. Allegedly, I don't know that. That's an assertion of Jonathan there. So question the real agenda. I take that advice, question the real agenda. It's always a good thing to do, isn't it? Follow the money, who benefits, etc. All parties have the potential to be corrupt. In the USA, both parties are 100% corrupt, says Sarah Hedrick. Happy to see someone resign. Okay, a sacrificial lamb for all of politics there, maybe globally. Will there be early elections? There might be other comments coming in about that. Public money being mismanaged and transferred into private hands of friends and prospective corporate employers with no oversight. That's familiar. Litio y hydrogenio, both huge corruption. I guess wherever there's big money, there's going to be some big corruption potentially. Sue's glad I lived in 3 countries with good socialist services, coming to the defense of socialism there, particularly healthcare, worried about some people's interpretation and that they equate it with communism. And it can all come out in the conversation, Sue's. We don't need to worry none necessarily. As long as people can be respectful and legal, let's have the conversation here. Good, bad leadership in all walks of life. Well said. And thank you, Fat Baker. We read that one out. The PM says Sir Lion H resigned because the Supreme Court is investigating him, is Sir Lion H's assessment of the situation, and suspect he is distancing himself from this to stay clean for his potential European role, with a quizzical emoji. Jonathan again there. And I think what it does, it leaves questions for everyone with regards to what it means to them, says Bobby O'Reilly. Locals and foreigners. But again, the political establishment has let the people they represent down. Okay, yeah. Well, that's a familiar story too. Thank you for that, Bobby. Back to you, Andrew. On a personal level, how does this cause you to respond to the situation, given a number of shaky things that have been going on recently from an immigrant point of view?
Well, again, I just think this is yet another thing to add to the list. Obviously, there's what I've observed personally about Portugal is whenever the policies or requirements to migrate were, it seems to be every 6 months they flip-flopped and changed their mind about what was needed to be done for estrangeros.
Yeah.
So like I said, sadly, it's unsurprising that we're in the situation this evening. Also, it reminds me of the last time a Prime Minister resigned was David Cameron over another political farce. Let's not dig that one up again, but,
Yeah, it's not as if him resigning made it okay, is it?
Sadly, in this day and age. yeah, sadly, in this day and age, it's like another one on the list, right? It's my point to this. But look, obviously, the world still turns and we still have lives to live. But sadly, these institutions that are supposed to govern for the people, it appears again. This is just an observation. No foundations to this, but it appears to be that people go into politics not for the benevolence of the people, but for the lining of their own pockets.
Did anyone believe the former scenario anymore? With all of this going on, perhaps not. We can have a look at BBC coverage from our native UK if you want to stick around for that in just a moment. Jonathan Matthews giving us a bit of perspective here. Putting this into perspective, says Jonathan, it pales into insignificance compared to the PPE contracts. Well, they were pretty significant when they awarded to government chums in the UK during COVID, you're saying. I don't know if that's a typo or you meant to put that, but it pales into insignificance in comparison in terms of the financial gains.
It reminds me also of the billions spent.
What, track and trace?
Track and trace is the billions they pumped into a useless system, which we all had to subscribe to be able to travel across borders.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That was the case, wasn't it? It's almost like as soon as you've forgotten something, there's something else to come along, isn't there, to attract your attention? So let's look at the BBC's coverage. I think this is BBC International, isn't it? BBC.com. And their headline, Portuguese PM Antonio Costa resigns over lithium deal probe. This is Ana Nicolai da Costa, no relation, I'm sure, reporting on this. Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa resigned after investigators searched his official residence in an inquiry into alleged corruption. He said he had not been named as a suspect, but believed the inquiry was incompatible with staying in office. That seems to be the general tone or pitch for him and why he's resigning. Prosecutors said on Tuesday that's today, of course, investigating concessions awarded for lithium mines and hydrogen production. They said detention warrants were issued for 5 people, including Mr. Costa's chief of staff. So it goes into his whole team here and friends by the sound of it, Vitor Escaria. Publico newspaper reported that Mr. Escaria had been detained. Infrastructure Minister João Galamba has meanwhile been indicted as part of the inquiry into energy deals. The dignity, this is a quote now, the dignity of the functions of Prime Minister is not compatible with any suspicion about his integrity, his good conduct, and even less the suspicion of the practice of any criminal act, the Prime Minister said in a televised address earlier today. Mr. Costa said he was caught by surprise by the corruption investigation, but promised to collaborate with it. There is no illicit act that weighs on my conscience or even any censurable act, he added. President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, the president here in Portugal, said he had accepted the Prime Minister's resignation and summoned political parties for consultations Wednesday, tomorrow. So this will run and run. I think Joel said he was expecting a statement from Antonio Costa on Thursday, quinta-feira. The political crisis unfolded after prosecutors published a statement detailing searches in more than 40 different premises as part of the inquiry. So this has been rumbling under the surface for some time. Prosecutors are investigating alleged corruption and influence peddling in lithium mining concessions in northern Portugal, as well as a hydrogen production project and the planned construction of a data center as well in the deep water port of Sines, south of Lisbon. That's some way down towards the Algarve, isn't it? About 140 detectives searched 17 residential properties and 25 other premises, including the office of the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and 2 government ministries. They also searched municipal offices in Sines. Okay, I don't need to read the whole thing. I'll put the link to that in the chat for you. Andrew, last word from you.
The very last word, one word, typical.
Well, thank you for that inspiring and uplifting finish. But I totally understand it at the same time. So thank you, Andrew, live on the phone from Lisbon. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
And you guys have a great evening, and I'll keep watching.
All right, thanks, mate. Yes, your contributions are very welcome in the chat, as are everybody's. Or if you want to call in, 913-590-303 on the WhatsApp. Why not call in and tell us what you're thinking about that? Thank you very much for your continued contributions here. Definitely convid, no typo from Jonathan. Tom Smith, as for PMs resigning, anyone remember Liz Truss? Nope. Liz who? Yes, well done, Andrew Gilchrist. So Johnson should have resigned long before he did as well. And what about Trump facing the music? That's a bit too broad a view for us this evening. We're trying to find out what's going on here in Portugal with the resignation of the Prime Minister Antonio Costa, which happened this afternoon, and to see what implications it might have for us foreigners here, the estrangeiros in this country. What are your concerns as a foreigner, perhaps, if you're tuned in tonight? Tell me what you're wondering, thinking, or even worried about. And Tom adding to Portuguese, the trials are scheduled to start next spring. So, yeah, it looks like, I think that's referring to Donald Trump. Seems to be back and forth and up and down from various courts, doesn't he, across the land? That would need a whole nother program or mini-series to understand what's going on there, I think. And maybe they do that on purpose. Where does all the money come from? Is it magically manifested by the Wizard of Oz or issued by the banking Leviathan? I think probably the latter rather than the former Squire of the Shires. Thanks for tuning in this evening. Let's take a look at some more coverage then while somebody wants to call in or add more comments in the chat here. And over on our GMP VIP platform, I've gathered together a few different news sources to keep us up to date with this. Next up on the screen, Prime Minister has resigned. Let's look at the Portugal News' coverage of this now and see how they've looked at it. Re-immigration, which party would be best and why? That's a great question. Thank you for that, Suze. Whilst we're looking at the Portugal News, that's another thing to consider then. Portuguese friends, people, could you give us your answer to that? Portuguese people, Portuguese friends of the Good Morning Portugal community. I know there's a lot more people watching than are actually commenting. Now's your chance, folks, and also to call in on use the Portugal code 003519135900303. Unless there is more to add from anybody, I think I'll call it a day after this Portugal news piece that I'm about to share with you, because basically we're finding out what's going on. We're seeing the reporting, and you've got an opportunity to talk and ask questions if you want to. If we're all dried up after the Portugal news, we can call it a day there, because I think this is going to run anyway. As a potential immigrant, says Tom, I think everything is going to be put on pause. We may get another year of NHR at least while this is sorted out. Well, that's possibly a silver lining then, isn't it, to this difficult situation for Senor Costa. It's good for slowing the amount of people who want to move to Portugal, but many of those people aren't very familiar with European politics. Nubianette, are you thinking that perhaps because of the instability or perceived instability, that's going to slow the amount of people who want to move to Portugal? They, of course, as I was talking to Joel about, they've had the news of the golden visa, they've had the NHR, they've had various budget or rises in taxation within the last budget that's all coming this way. And now you think this might add to political instability, possibly, if that's what you're suggesting there. I'd like to know, if you don't mind. Great show. Thank you, Jonathan. That's the sort of encouragement I need to stick around for a bit longer. Seems a lot of public ministers who go on to get six-figure salary jobs with companies they were meant to regulate. Funny that, isn't it? I'm sure there's nothing untoward going on there. But that's a great question, Suze. Which party then would be best for us immigrants? Many people fear the Chega party, and some of you maybe have been watching this show long enough to remember me finding out from a gentleman who offered to tell me all about politics in Portugal. And then I was really surprised. You should have seen the look on my face when he told me he was a Chega party representative. And I asked him a little bit about that, but I was quite shaken to discover that, because I have them, like many immigrants do, as the kind of bogeyman of Portuguese politics, who doesn't want us here. If you are listening in or are sensitive to Chega, you might want to call in. I'd certainly love to discuss it with you. 913-590-303. We're all about respectful, lawful, legal chat here to understand each other more and to see what's really going on, rather than cancelling people or not talking to them because they're not your kind of people. I think we need less of that in the world, not more of it. Yes, the NHR has confused and frightened many, says Nubianette, but they don't understand their own US taxes. Well, that's true, isn't it? But I guess at least you've grown up with that and you've got some sense of it. Whereas if you're moving to a foreign country that seems a little bit unstable, that might be a whole another level of uncertainty that you might not be willing to tolerate in your life. So Portugal has some work to do. Unless, of course, as has been suggested elsewhere, that some of these things like the CEF blockage, the switch to AIMA, are all purposeful, just to slow things down and choke things up a little bit. I wonder what you think about that. Do let us know in the chat or call in 913-590-303. Let me just check the phones. Doing everything here. I haven't got a team of producers here. I'm running the whole show, literally. I'm just checking to see if anyone else has called in on 913-590-303. Let's look then at the Portugal news. Prime Minister Antonio Costa announced today that he submitted his resignation to the President of the Republic, Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa. We're up to speed so far on that. That's a great picture of him pulling a face against a salmon pink wall. The announcement has come following the public ministry revealed that it is the target of an independent investigation by the Supreme Court of Justice into lithium and hydrogen projects. Now, that's interesting as well, is it not? That who is doing the investigation? They perhaps are another sort of pillar of the establishment here, but we don't necessarily know who they are. Are they the ones really running the country, perhaps? Does that suggest to us? In a communication to the country from his official residence in São Bento, Lisbon, the Prime Minister justified his decision by stating that the functions of Prime Minister are not compatible with the suspicion of any criminal act. Now, that's not to say others had those suspicions, but when it got to that level, I guess, of the Supreme Court of Justice, that's where it became untenable for him. Obviously, he says, obviously, I submitted my resignation to the President of the Republic. The communication to Antonio Costa's country from the Prime Minister's official residence also follows searches in São Bento targeting his Chief of Staff, Vitor Escaria, who we found out before, and we heard about before, and members of his government. Antonio Costa submitted his resignation after almost 8 years in office. As Andrew was saying, a lot of people feel like they need a change. But that's the cycle. That's the churn of politics, isn't it? We want change. You get change, and then you want change again, don't you, generally speaking, in politics? But 8 years, that's quite a long term, isn't it? And as far as I'm aware, I was doing a little bit of research and writing about the political system here in Portugal this very afternoon. There are no limits to the amount of terms you can do as a prime minister here. There are for the president, but not the prime minister. So technically, theoretically, he could go on and on, but maybe not now. A position for which he was sworn in. This is his 8 years of office started in November 26th. Almost to the day then, this 8 years in office, November 26, 2015, by the then President of the Republic, Aníbal Cavaco Silva. Now, sadly, there aren't any comments on the Portugal News website because they're usually really good. People don't hold back, as I'm sure you know if you're a reader of the Portugal News when it comes to making comments on the website there. Let's go back to a few of your comments. Oh, loads more have come in. Thank you very much. Oh, this is why you want the doc on. Your fellow left bloc, Bloco Esquerdo, supporters, but do we know each other, the Fat Baker? I don't recognize you by your nom de plume there. And let me just put the link to that Portugal News piece onto the screen as well for you if you want to peruse that for yourself, or go over and make a comment live while we're watching the together the news unfold here tonight. So where did we get to? We were talking about the Wizard of Oz and banking leviathans. And Suze was asking the question, re-immigration, which party would be best and why? Perhaps that's the answer that the Fat Baker is giving you, Left Bloc or PCP. Or is it those are two separate parties, aren't they? Of course, the Communist Party and Left Bloc there. I think that might be one of your answers or two answers to your one question there, Suze. And we have Nubianet. Yes, the NHR has confused and frightened many, and they don't understand their US taxes. I read that out before, but I think that's a very useful sentiment. Incidentally, we are looking at the NHR impact implications with Duarte, who we spoke to recently on the Dream Team session over at Expats Portugal. He's joining us soon on the Expats Portugal webinar to talk more about that. A very popular guest who I described as the Harry Potter of taxation here in Portugal. He wasn't unhappy with that title. He seemed quietly proud of that. I'm a sub-prime minister, a self-confessed sub-prime minister. T-Duck is in the building tonight as well. Carl, having been in Portugal for a good amount of time, do all the recent changes seem unsettling from your view? That is a great question, and I don't mind answering that from J.K. Min, or are they par for the course? Part of what I was writing this afternoon, quite honestly, J.K. Min, is that I have the political age of around a 10-year-old, I think. social age. You know, when people are moaning about politics in a cafe or on public transport, for example, I don't know what they're talking about. And that suits me to a great extent. I'm not unhappy about being out of the UK, hearing people moaning about life all the time. You could say it was one of my motivations for moving. It's not that they're not doing it here. It's just that I can't understand them, which I take some great comfort in. Do all the recent changes seem unsettling from your view? Actually, no more unsettling than the general globalized phenomenon of world politics. I do find that generally unsettling. And I think maybe as Ubi was saying, you know, in terms of politics, and we've become used to least worst, haven't we? I can't think of a better place to be still, after all said and done, than being in Portugal with its amazing culture and beautiful quality of life. And to me, I've got an 80-20 thing going on. The daily culture is my 80%. I catch sight of this sort of thing. And of course, it's big, not just in the rearview mirror, it's big in the windscreen at the moment, the resignation of the PM. It's frenzied, exciting stuff that's going on the political scene. But still, I have to get it into perspective by saying it's 20% of what's going on. It will, of course, affect my living life and has done. But you've got to do that wherever you live. So I would say, in answer to your question, and I hope it's a useful answer to you, that it's unsettling anyway, isn't it? Being at the mercy of distant centralized leaders who I think we've come to a general consensus here that some of them might have their own interests at heart more than yours. That's everywhere, is it not? And it's not as bad as it might be. I'll put it that way here in Portugal. And there are other things that keep me here. I didn't come here for the politics. I came here for the culture. I remain a big fan of the culture, as you'll know. If you see all that I put into learnaboutportugal.com, which celebrates my love of Portugal. Hope that answers your question. Laura P., it will be interesting to see what will change on the Orçamento Estado, as the end of NHR was a proposal from him. Yeah, and it was all supposed to come into place by the end of the year, wasn't it? So that's a lie. What about 400% car tax increase, says Zé Pedro 6666. The maximum amount is 25 euros. Jesus Christ. Okay. I've heard it's a little bit more than 25. Oh, is that the maximum increase? 25 euros. But thank you, Zé Pedro, for that. You're very welcome to put the record straight. And you clearly have done in your own way there. Thank you very much. I suspect you might be Portuguese. And one thing I would observe about Portuguese politics, for those of us who are foreigners here, is Portuguese people and Portuguese politicians seem to be so much more savagely hostile towards each other than I'm used to in the UK. Very interesting how I think it's very interesting how Portuguese people talk to each other all the time. It looks like there might be an argument going on, and they're just talking to their family and friends. And I think we've got a taste of that from Zé Pedro there. So keep it coming, Zé Pedro. Remember, the NHR is speculation. Proposal, right? A speculation might be pushing it a bit too far, Jonathan. It's a proposal, isn't it? Gets raised every year and unlikely to get ascension. Portugal really would be biting the hand that feeds it. Interesting point of view. The devil, you know, is more comforting. Yes, exactly right. And that's, again, why people might stay in their country of origin rather than risking it in a country that's beginning to look a little bit unstable. If I weren't guilty, I'd fight like hell. But if I were guilty, I'd just resign. Interesting. Thank you, T-Duck, for that input there about a possible theory about why Antonio Costa has resigned today. In the US, many federal employees whose job it is to enforce regulations eventually wind up employed by corporations who want those regulations weakened or eliminated, says Stephanie Neubert. Good evening to you, Stephanie. Thanks for your contribution. Same old everywhere. Some say we're in a fourth turning, you know, and that these things will change. They can't go on as they are. This too shall pass, right? Or transform or evolve. I don't know if anybody wants to hazard a guess about that. Imagine that. The leader should not be affiliated with any criminal act. What a concept. You'd want that to be standard practice, wouldn't you, Suze? Could turn into another Russiagate or Mar-a-Lago over here by Portuguese standards. Thank you, Squire. And the Global Nobles are in as well. Boa noite a todos from the Global Nobles. Great to see you here. And smash that like button. A good house, a good, nice full house tonight for an impromptu live stream about the resignation of the Prime Minister of Portugal today, this afternoon, with with allegations of corruption. He stepped down as soon as they seemed to be coming to light and the fumes were unbearable. Keep up your excellent show, Carl. Oh, cheers, Fat Baker. We're friends on Facebook under my real name. Yeah, but who are you? PCP. It's all right for you. I'm here, bearing all. And there are people working under pseudonyms here. But anyway, thank you, Fat Baker, for your contributions. PCP, question mark, from David Martins presents. You're a promoter, David. All they want is everyone to be equally poor, the PCP, according to David. Where in the world is there a prosperous communist country? Oh, I was hoping it wouldn't degenerate into that. It's not unusual when, to quote Tom Jones, for conversation to head that way when talking about communism. But maybe now is not the place to go into a deep conversation of the pros and cons of capitalism and communism right now. Plenty of places you can do that on the internet, right? You can fall out with your own friends and relatives on Facebook tonight doing that, or if you haven't already, that is. In addition, they rather support Putin than Ukraine. Have I made my feelings clear? Let me just see, David. Yes, you have. No, it is a 400% increase with the road duty there, says Bobby, challenging Pedro, Zay Pedro 6666. If someone's got, if I can fact check that live on air with a link that somebody sends me, I would. In the US, says Ubi, we have the best politicians that Putin can buy. See, it drifts away. We're talking about the resignation of the Portuguese Prime Minister here, and people can't help but mix in their personal feelings and their more general ideas about politics. Would this be Porta? I don't know what you mean. Oh, Agua Gate, Porta da Costa. Oh, I see. Very good. Costa Gate, Porta da Costa there. Okay, I think we'll leave it there. I'll just check the phones to see if there's anyone I need to ring back. I mean, we're just getting warmed up here. And I know that more and more people are joining the call, maybe seeing that it's live on YouTube. I don't know what else to share with you right now. And we haven't got any other calls. You can call 913-590-303. I'd be delighted to take your call. The question about there being an early election, not many people have responded to that. Which is the best party for the immigrant? We haven't had answers to that. But obviously, we'll take those questions forward. This is a situation that's unfolding. First I heard about it today was a tweet earlier on from Politico. Breaking news: Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa resigned today after police raided his official residence as part of a corruption investigation. That tends to be the optics, doesn't it? That's how it's being looked at. That's how it's being seen about what's going on with Antonio Costa. And good tip, Tom, to say if you are a foreigner, immigrant, expat, whatever you call yourself, estranjero, why not follow it on Portuguese TV and brush up with your language skills as well? What's your take on this situation, Carl? I think I basically said before, Andrew, that's Andrew Gilchrist, who called in from Lisbon before. Personally, I mean, what does it matter what I think? But for what it's worth, my personal take is, as I said before, politicians are going to be politicians, are they not? It's not especially shocking, is it? I mean, it's kind of shocking, but then when you think about it and get used to it, it's not that shocking. It would appear that there are, I'm not saying this about this Prime Minister because it remains a matter of an investigation, but there are certainly people who rise to the top in order to further their own agendas and not necessarily look after people. However, I suspect there are people who do want to go into politics, who do go into politics and care with the idea of caring for other people and making a fairer, saner society. My feeling about it, my take on this is that our system is not set up to foster, encourage, nurture, and look after those kinds of people, that latter category that I'm talking about. And our system tends to look after the people who are feathering their own nests. That's how it occurs to me. Thanks for doing this, Carl. You asked for my take. I gave it to you, Portuguese. Thanks for doing this, Carl. It's a reminder. I need to learn more about Portuguese politics. Well, I'm writing about it, and we do have facilities over there. We have resources at GMP VIP, learnaboutportugal.com. Sign up for that. And you'll get access to a hell of a lot of information about how things work here, not just the politics, every aspect of Portuguese life. We add something every day to that, learnaboutportugal.com, if you want to sign up over there. Yes, so your thanks are well received. Thank you, Nubianet, for tuning in tonight. Still, nothing that frightens me that you're hearing so far. I'm glad to hear that. My intention is not to frighten anyone. Certainly, my intention is to help people understand the situation more, and that's the spirit I go into this. The US has the best politicians that Xi Jinping can buy, offering another insight input there. T-Duck. To Nubianet from Andrew, still Portugal, just like the US, survived the Don. I'm not sure what that means. My comparison is France with what's going on in France. Nubianet, yeah, a working knowledge, family knowledge there in France. What do you make of that, Nubianet? What your comparison leads you to what sort of conclusions? Agree with your summary. Politicians will be politicians, self-interest rather than integrity. Jonathan, you seem to be well up to speed on the lithium situation. Did I read out all of your earlier comment about that? It was very it was a big comment, which and was it was this one? Did I read that out? Oh yes, that was about how many Portuguese will be able to afford the electric cars. But I think you started off with something else. Oh, you did. You gave us a link. Here it is. Check out the scale of the threat to Portugal from lithium mining. Swathes of countryside at risk and communities that would be decimated. I know people have been protesting about this and taking it to central government in the last couple of years. So those people, I suspect, will be pleased to see that it's on the agenda and being talked about. And this seems to be a bit of a spanner in the works of the development of lithium mining. There will be people who are pleased to see that at the moment. By coincidence, says David Martins, by coincidence, I had emailed the Prime Minister on Sunday. I suspect he might have been a bit busy, David. No offense, but he was complaining. You were complaining about the end of the NHR, and the next thing I know, he resigned. Was it David? Maybe it was. Maybe your emails do have that much power, David. Thank you for sharing. Late to the show, you can watch it again. Missed much? Fair bit in the last 40 minutes or so. Facebook user. Integrity in politics, that would be refreshing. It's not impossible, is it? It's not impossible for that to occur. But I think we need a system that would support, encourage, and foster that kind of behavior. We do prefer it, don't we, us human beings? Integrity, authenticity, those great values. Let's see what we can do to pack them into politics going forward. It's Owen. Yeah, you can watch it again, of course. Anything that we do, if you missed the beginning of this live stream, do watch it again as it's bundled up and packaged over there onto our YouTube channel automatically when we press the button to end the stream, which I'm going to do in just a moment. And don't forget, just because you haven't caught it live doesn't mean you needn't comment over on YouTube or even give me a call on the morning show. So we'll see you tomorrow morning. Bobby O'Reilly, I think we'll have one or two things to say tomorrow. I suspect Heather Binder will too. Jackie is joining us from Expats Portugal. I imagine she's got a view on this as well. So join them tomorrow morning from 8:30 for the Good Morning Portugal show. We're having a vote on proposed lithium mining very close to us. There's a local vote there, some local politics. And actually, that was something I was writing about this afternoon. I quite like what I think is going on in Portugal, that there is local representation through, at freguesia, parish level, through to the Câmara, to the local level within the municipal Câmara Municipal, and then on to the larger assembly of the parliament in the capital. So it does seem that there is some influence you can have locally, but of course, if shenanigans are going on, and I'm not saying they are, but if they are at the top in a centralized way, and you're up against big business, we've seen far too many films and documentaries about that, and we see what happens with how that all turns out. Most of the prospecting contracts, this might be connected to what I just said, most of the prospecting contracts awarded to foreign companies too. Sadly, Portugal will see little or no real benefit, economic or otherwise, if the scale of lithium extraction goes ahead. The irony when the government wants to increase road tax on older sustainable vehicles. Yeah, very interesting. Thank you for that, Jonathan. And Lady Portuglish was cheering upon hearing the news. So not alone among the Portuguese people we were talking about who think he's been around too long. I'm just happy for the opportunity to boo and hiss and greet the news that he's on his way. That's Antonio Costa, who quit this afternoon. Thank you, Carl, says Jay came in. It sounds like I gave you a satisfactory answer. Owen has some great news. He certainly does. If you're a pal of Owen's, check him out on Facebook. And these firms are big enough to buy the votes they need. Scandalous assertion, Mr. Matthews. May or may not be right. So I wonder. Madonna's playing in Lisbon tonight. Material Girl. She read it early on, didn't she? And chose her side back in the 80s. The materialists may be winning at the moment. compared to those of a more spiritual disposition who might not want to see Mother Earth ripped apart and her lithium extracted from her. This conversation will, of course, continue on the Good Morning Portugal show and in the comments of this live stream, which I'm going to consign to YouTube now. Thank you so much. I'm just going to play a little bit of an advert for the Good Morning Portugal show. Join us every weekday morning from 8:30 until 10 with a great collection of co-hosts and guests. Bobby O'Reilly tomorrow with Heather Binder and Jackie A from Expats Portugal. See you in the morning, folks. Thank you for being here.
Bom dia, Portugal!
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another